Hello and welcome to week one of the first ever Establish the Pool. My name is Adam Levitan, and each week on this show, I'll be joined by Mark Dankenbring and Peter Jennings to talk, you guessed it, NFL pools. That means Survivor, Pick'em, confidence pools, all that good stuff. Peter, good afternoon.
Afternoon. We're also coming off an incredible 3v3 victory where we were all teammates. So working hard as usual. Great morning. How are you guys doing?
Another tough one. It's perfect. I'm doing well. Mark, how's it going?
It's great. Honored to be here with you two fine gentlemen and talk football, man. It's finally here. Let's go.
It's finally here. Yes. I thought last night's game was very, very good for me personally. And so that's all that really matters. Anyways, on today's show, we're going to talk through week one through the lens of pools. I know everyone out there is in kind of a bit of a different format, likely with their pools. We're mainly going to talk normal Survivor. We're going to talk the confidence pool that we're running with our friends at Run Your Pool. And we'll talk the super contest style stuff. And by the way, the betting show that I'm doing with Davidow later tonight, I think it should help with the super contest style stuff also. But anyways, before we get into it, Ron wanted to quickly remind everyone of two things. First, this free pool that we are running, you can still enter it. It's totally free. Chance to win 10K cash, prizes for the top 100 finishers. See my Twitter for details on how to get in to that pool that we're running. Also, if you do not have our in-season package yet, what are you waiting for? Be sure you grab it. Everything we think you need to win at DFS season long includes this show will be premium at times and the betting show with Davidow. Tons more shows and context around all our projections and our ownership projections. Be sure you cop that. All right.
I want to shill David out one more time too. I mean, the guy is an absolute legend. We actually have it on the screen here at Unabated to a Deck Prism. He moved to Colorado, one of the sharpest bettors, and now has built something incredible at Deck Prism /Huddle. And then one other shill. This might be the best sparkling water ever made. Blackberry lemonade by Waterloo. So I'm done with the shills. Let's get into the show.
If Waterloo Lemonade wants to compensate us for that, feel free to reach out. We're just doing unpaid.
That was for free. There's no paid.
Unpaid shilling. Okay, here we go.
It's so good, dude. Really is.
All right. First thing I want to talk about is confidence pool. And so confidence pool is what we're running with our friends that Run Your Pool. It's the ETR pool this year. Basically, you rank from 1 to 6, how confident you are that a team will cover the spread. Now, with all these pools, I feel like the key to all of them is stale lines and how you handle stale lines. Because for all these pools, super contest, confidence pools, all the lines come out on Wednesday that you can bet against for the pool. But obviously the market moves and sometimes moves a lot, and not just for sharp betting movement, for injuries or other things. And so there's a few that stick out that I think we need to talk about. The first one was one that I was on for sure. Houston in the pool line is plus 8.5 on the road in Indy. Now the Colts are only 7 in the market. And so I thought Houston was really good anyways. I'm concerned now that everyone is going to be on this, but I think like historically, especially in the beginning, I try not to worry too much in these type of pools about what everybody else is doing. Mark, what do you think about that Colts Houston one where it's moved a 1.5 from 8.5 to 7? And then also I know the Chiefs line has moved a lot in that game against the Cardinals.
Yeah, I think the movements are important in terms of what numbers, kind of the lines move through. So 8.5 to 7 is, a pretty decent number, especially with the Texans at home there. You get that 8 coverage, even if the Colts win by 7, you're still good there. So that's important. But if something moves from, let's say 4 to 5 or 4 to 5.5, that's not necessarily super important. And the Chiefs have gone from 3.5 to 5.5, 6 at most spots, minus 3.5 against the Cardinals. So, that's relatively meaningful when you get that 2.5 point movement. Typically I like the movement the most because then it kind of tips me off on who other people are going to take. I don't necessarily feel locked in to taking those games. I think I would like to discuss with you guys about like if we're ranking the Chiefs as our most confident and we know they're going to be popular, do you kind of lean in and want to do it as your most confident team, or would you go more like on the lower level, say a 1 on still, or would you fade, kind of entirely? What is your strategy there?
Yeah, I like to think of it on a game by game basis. In other words, if I still think that the line is plus EV at the pool line, that's a big difference. I wasn't sure that I love the Chiefs at that pool line originally, and so I guess what I'm saying is IKB can I know better. IKB can go a long way in this because we know a lot of people are be taking the Chiefs. But I do think that, like, you know, especially in pools where people aren't that sophisticated, like, I'm not even sure they're looking at line moves. And so you can just like gain a huge edge just by taking like the biggest line moves if your opponents aren't doing that. And then if you get behind or something, you can catch up by thinking about what other people are going to do more. At the beginning, I just try to play the best plays I think is right. I'm not sure that.
I think in week one too. You know, everything's pretty uncertain.
Right.
You know, we learned that a bit last night with the Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson stuff, and there's just gonna be a lot of chaos in week one. So I think, you know, any convictions you have are good to lean into, especially early in the year.
Yeah, there's some other lines that have moved a decent amount, and Mark mentioned moving through key numbers, and I think that makes a big difference. Washington in the pool is -3.5 over the Jaguars. The line now is Washington 2.5. In other words, that has moved across 3, one of the most important numbers, if not the most important number. And so that tells me that the books are at least didn't want to be out there with Washington as more than a field goal. And so I think that Jacksonville +3.5 in the pool line is okay. Another one that moved through a key number, San Francisco, the pool line, 7.5 on the road in Chicago. That line is down to 6.5. And that's one that I like a lot. Went through 7. Trey Lance's first real game as the unquestioned starter. I think that there's questions with George Kittle, who's one of the best real life players in the entire NFL. Whether he's going to be able to go doesn't look great for him right now if he's not out already. And so, you know, I know everybody thinks Chicago is like the worst team in the history of the world. 7 points at home. And similar, it's the way I feel about the Texans. 7 points at home is just so much when there's so much uncertainty around week one. So we got really big line moves there on San Francisco and Indy. And I still like those Chicago and Houston ones.
Yep.
Peter, any thoughts on this?
We can actually figure out the exact value of the line moves and how much they're worth. So, for instance, I took -7, -110, -8.5, -110. I mean, you can take out the big too. But the -7, if you move that to 8.5, it goes all the way up to +114. Mm-hmm. So you're getting 24 cents difference going all the way to 8.5. So that's a huge move. And I think that's something that's really important, is not all points are created equal in the NFL. And you can actually compare prices with the calculators here at Unabated. But in addition, that Bears line, I threw up our first NFL side bet of the year. Our group here was Chicago +7. We didn't get the 7.5, but I think the George Kittle thing really moved the market quite a bit, which makes sense. I mean, George Kittle obviously is a good fantasy play, but I think he's even more valuable in real life with his blocking and just a big part of San Francisco. So the market has definitely moved there. And that's one thing I agree with what you said, Adam. I think we should be mostly just searching for value early on, and you can let game theory kind of impact your decision-making later on, especially early in these pools.
Couple more really big line moves I wanted to mention. The Titans pool line is 6.5. That's down to 5.5 now. And Baltimore was 7.5. Now it's 7. I think that like Flacco is probably a half point better than Zach Wilson right now. And I think that's what that line move had to do with. And so, yeah, I'll certainly be looking at all of those. It's not that hard. Obviously, you can just go to Unabated and be careful which book you're looking at. I know it's painted a lot here now, but typically Deck Prism, Bookmaker are two markets, two books that I like to look at for actually having the sharpest lines and compare those.
We had a 3.5 to 2.5. Is that right?
Yeah, we had 3.5 to 2.5 on Jacksonville, Washington. Yes.
How many cents do you think that's worth?
God, 30.
What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, 30. I would guess 32.
47 cents.
Yeah. Wow.
So that 3 is just so big. So, you know, if you have -2.5, -110, that -3.5 comes all the way to -2.5, -157.
Wow.
So it's even bigger than that 7 to 8.5. That 3 is just such a key number. That's 6.5 to 5.5. My guess is that's like almost nothing.
Really?
Do you input the total on that game too? Does that bear any?
That's another thing to obviously factor in is the total.
Because lower the total, the more each point is worth for the underdog. Yeah.
Right. I think that's something to point out too in that Chicago San Francisco game as well. It's the lowest total on the week. Obviously, we think San Francisco is going to run a ton and might even lean more into the run with Kittle. I know ETR projections, we have the 49ers projected for, I think, 3 fewer pass attempts than any other team this week. So that should tick the clock and, you know, could potentially lean into the home team dog there.
Okay. Speaking of home dog, I can't remember week one where we had so many home dogs. Jets, Falcons, Bears, Lions, Texans, Cardinals, Vikings, Cowboys, Seahawks are all home dogs in week one. And I think there's multiple things going on here. First, it's just a coincidence, right? Some of the good teams are on the road, some of the bad teams are home. Also, though, and I'm going to talk to David about this tonight, I think gradually over the last 2, 5, 10 years, home field in the NFL has been worth less and less and less as teams have better travel. Refs are more sophisticated and less biased. Teams are staying at the Four Seasons, not in shipbag hotels and stuff like that, and they're set up well to perform well on the road. And so I think home field is worth less. I still value it, certainly, but David can certainly drill down the exact numbers of how much it's worth, and it's worth different amounts to different teams in different stadiums, obviously, and how far the travel is and all that. But also, things like San Francisco on the road in Chicago, West Coast team going for a 1 p.m. Eastern game. I think there's still some validity in that, even though the market certainly bakes it in more now than they used to. But just so many home dogs. And when we're talking about Survivor, I mean, I don't even like to take home dogs ever, road favorites ever in Survivor, ever. Like, I want to take favorites, obviously, in Survivor. I don't want to take road favorites. But this week, I mean, we're looking at data here. We're talking about like the highest percent of team picked by the field this week is going to be the Ravens, a road favorite, but only like 22%. Normally, in most weeks, you get like everybody on one team, 50, 60, 70%. You can get a ton of leverage in Survivor by fading those 50, 60, 70, 80% when everybody's on one side. This week in week one, it's so hard. Everybody's on a zillion different things. So it's a really unique week one Survivor. Mark, how are you thinking about Survivor for week one?
Yeah, not just the Ravens, but Broncos and Colts are the next two teams that are picked the most, and they're also on the road. And Broncos obviously is in Seattle, which typically one of the toughest places to play with the noise, and you have the Russ narrative there and everything. Typically, my strategy in Survivor is to kind of avoid the top one or two, most popular teams on the week, and kind of live in that 3 to 5 range. In week one, I do kind of like the Titans. They're a team I'm not really on for season long, but kind of entering week one, they're as healthy as they're going to be. Derrick Henry is as healthy as he's going to be. They're playing a Giants team that has a new head coach in Dayball. The wide receiver core is a mess there. Just not really sure how that's going to play out. And Daniel Jones is good for a turnover or two. So I kind of like leaning in to the Titans in week one because they're kind of middle of the pack, decent, home favorite at 5.5. And when you look at their schedule kind of throughout the year, I think in Survivor, it's, my strategy is to kind of, you only have to pick 18 teams, all season. So I like to kind of identify 12 to 15 that I know I'm going to take, and, identify what weeks are the strongest, and then just cross-reference those, and try and make a grid of leaving myself an option or two each week. Because obviously a lot's going to happen throughout the season that's going to change that. But yeah, for week one and kind of looking at the rest of the season, I'm hoping to be fading the Titans down the stretch. So I think week one, they're a decent bet since they're at home, and the top 3 other teams are on the road.
The Titans do not have like a soft spot in their schedule until you get all the way to week 14. They're home against Jacksonville. So, I think if you think about it like that, Titans are a good team to burn. I just think the Giants can beat them. Like, I don't think the Giants are that much worse than the Titans. I think the Titans are one of the most overrated teams in the league. I know David was on under 9.5 for the Titans, and it hasn't gone well for the Giants, but man, I'm still think that they can win this game, period. And that's the thing about week one. You're not going to have any layups. There's no 13-point home favorites that everybody's on. And so you're going to have to do something thin, such as a road favorite or something like the Titans. I've fired 3, 4, something like that into the Survivor on DraftKings so far. It's $100 and they're guaranteeing $1 million to first. And so I'll probably fire, I think it's a max of 10. I'll probably fire some more in there. I think I'm going to diversify a little bit if you have more than one entry. Peter, how are you thinking about Survivor this week?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very strange week, and I actually identified the Titans as well. Basically agree with everything you said. I want to short the Titans. In best ball, took very little Derrick Henry. I do have a little bit of some of the pass catchers and some Tannehill late, but broadly bearish on this team relative to expectation. I think they're missing some really talented players, and I just think they're overrated. You can get more insights from David Out and Adam on that. But it's a good spot, and you're not going to use them the rest of the year. At least maybe we're totally wrong and they're a better team than we expect, but I can't imagine using the Titans relative to some of these other teams that are going to be in great spots. So from that regard, I think it's great. And there really isn't another, you really don't want to burn some of these good teams on the road as like a touchdown or less favorite. So it's a tough spot from a survivor perspective. And I agree with you, Adam. Diversifying makes a lot of sense. I might do some stuff that's like, I would almost never consider. Like, would you ever, burn like Washington, for example, just a small favorite at home? I mean, you're not going to use them probably for the rest of the year, but is that something you'd consider? I don't know, because the obvious other choices are, the Colts, the Broncos, the Chiefs.
I'm not taking 49ers. Like, there's no way I do 49ers. I think that's gonna be inflated. People are gonna take more 49ers than they should.
Yeah, and the 49ers are going to have some amazing spots. I mean, I want to take the 49ers at home versus Seattle, right? Like, there's some obvious games that you can look to with these teams. I mean, the Saints is an interesting one. I bet a lot of teams are going to pick on, or a lot of people that are playing survivors are going to pick on the Falcons throughout this year. I think that's a team we can expect to be quite bad. But again, it's a divisional game on the road. Like, it's tricky. Yeah. This is the trickiest survivor week one that I can remember.
Yeah, for sure. I thought the Bengals were at least interesting. Again, I don't want to burn the Bengals, but like as just a solid home favorite, really good team, way better offensive line against a Pittsburgh team, which obviously has, major quarterback question marks as well as one of the worst offensive lines. Obviously, I don't want to burn the Bengals this early. They play at the Jets in week 3. They're home against Miami in week 4. They're home against the Falcons in week 7. They're home against the Panthers in week 9. Like, the Bengals are going to have a lot of good spots, so I hate to burn them, but I feel like that might be the safest one for this week.
I was actually kind of thinking of fading the Bengals this week, just because of the lack of reps and like continuity that they built up in the preseason with Burrow, with his appendicitis. Like, he didn't get many reps with the starters, and it's also week 1 of this new O-line. Like, I think the O-line, we can predict that they'll get stronger as the season goes along, and they're going against TJ Watt and Cam Hayward, and I think there's just a decent amount of uncertainty on the Pittsburgh side there with Matt Canada and Trubisky. Like, the Bengals defense is, I think, going to have a tougher time preparing for them because it's something they've never seen in division. And growing up in Cincinnati, my whole life, I have seen way too many times when Bengals fans are hyped and hosting the Steelers, and the Steelers have no business winning the game, but they keep it close and potentially pull it out. So not necessarily, it is different. It is different. I know. I'm just if they were more popular, I would recommend more of a fade, but it doesn't seem like they're going to be one of the highest choices this week. So I think it's fine, but.
This is not the Bengals of your youth, Mark. This is Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase's Bengals. I mean, come on.
What about the Super Bowl loser narrative that seems to come to fruition, which we're trying to be data oriented, but I think the part that is interesting for the Bengals this year, and a reason to maybe be a little pessimistic relative to the Super Bowl appearance last year, is their schedule is much tougher this year. Mm-hmm. So that's the one thing that gives me pause. But yeah, I mean, again, picking on the Falcons, kind of where markets are now, I believe it's week 7, Bengals at home versus the Falcons. That's a smash spot for the Bengals.
All right. Last thing I wanted to mention was the super contest. So the difference between confidence pool and super contest style pool. Confidence pool, you rank from 1 to 6. You get points based on that. Super contest style, you just pick 5 games each week. I know a lot of people are in that. DraftKings is hosting, I think it's a $250 buy-in on that one as well. There's also some much bigger ones that I've played in before in Vegas, which are actually really, really fun. I think as you move up in stakes and these type of things, more and more people are looking at line movement. In the 250 buy-in on DraftKings, I'm not sure they will. So, I had written down a lot of the same stuff, the line movement that we had from the from the first one. The only other one that I would throw out is this Minnesota plus 1.5 at home. I mean, I don't think the Vikings are that great, but I don't think the Packers without Alan Lazard, I mean, they're going to be starting like Sammy Watkins, Randall Cobb, and Romeo Doubs. Robert Tonyan's probably not going to play. I mean, they're just a mess on offense. I think they'll be very good defensively, but they'll be a mess on offense, I think, and or at least not that strong. And so for them to be favored on the road, I thought was an interesting spot. But yeah, I don't know. Any other differences, Mark, between confidence and super contests that you think about while you're playing these?
Not a whole lot. Similar strategy and early in the season, I'm trying to play the values and kind of leaning into what I personally believe. And then we'll try and pivot, more later in the season. Week 1, I feel like we've kind of talked about most of my favorites. Like I think I probably will take the Chiefs. I personally bet the Steelers plus 6.5. Like I think that's a sneaky play, and not many people will go there. But for the most part, I early on, just kind of give the best lines that you can get, and hopefully things bounce your way in week 1.
Peter, I don't know if this is a data mistake or not, but Deck Prism is a point and a half off. I think there's almost no difference between 1.5 and 2.5, basically in terms of value.
There's a couple like that. Cleveland, Carolina too. I was actually just looking at Deck Prism as the +2.5, and you can get Carolina. You can get, or they have the -2.5 for Carolina, and then you can get the +1.5, -115. Based strictly on Deck Prism, that is a 7-cent edge. But you look at the rest of the market, like Bookmaker. You should have Bookmaker up here, by the way, bud. You're missing like a ton of the sharp books here.
Yeah, I think I need my account upgraded. Tell your boys.
Okay, well, we will absolutely get you upgraded, Adam. But yeah, there's spots like that. There are, the NFL is a much more efficient market than say college football, but there's quite a few interesting little arbs out there, depending on which books you are looking at. But yeah, this Minnesota Green Bay game. There's some different numbers out there, and you'll see that a lot. And that's the thing too, as a bettor, and with these pools, you just need to be really thoughtful. That 3.5 to 2.5 is a massive move, but between 1 and 2.5 is worth significantly less, and you can compare those prices.
Yep, exactly. And that should be pretty intuitive. Obviously, there's gonna be a lot of games that land on 3 teams kick game-winning field goals when it's tied, et cetera, et cetera. All right, this was fun for the first establish the pools. I'm sorry, I missed Stockpile and a couple other comments. Stockpile says sweet hairstyle, Mark.
What was the score in your guys' tennis match this morning?
I got Mark 6-3 this morning, but Mark's game is getting there. Yeah.
Adam's having a little elbow thing, and so the last few service games he was just feeding it in which threw me off a little bit, But,
I thought that was an advantage for you. I couldn't hit my massive serve.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay.
Your massive serve, he says.
No, we had it was good. The second game we played, Adam was serving. I think we had like 8 deuce points. I mean, it really got up there. So yeah, we're getting pretty even. I've yet to best him, but I think it's coming soon, one of these days.
Yeah, Mark plays very well. All right. If you guys have any comments, things that you want us to talk about on the show going forward, obviously this is a brand new show. We want it to be as helpful as it can be for you guys. Feel free to reach out in the DMs on Twitter is usually the easiest way to reach out and let me know if there's anything you want us to cover going forward. I do hope to have much more complete data sets for you guys on what exactly the field is doing in all these various contests going forward. So check back for that next week. And yeah, if you're into betting and if you're into these pools where we're gonna be talking about betting, Davidow show tonight, 8:30. Peter already talked about it. There's very few people I actually think can beat NFL sides and totals. I think Davidow is one of them. And so check in the show tonight, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, after Establish the Show, which is for in-season subscribers only. For Mark, for Peter, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.